Welcome back to another episode of the Register's Kettle podcast. And boy, do we have an explosive bit of news to talk about this week, both figuratively and literally. Not only has one particular vendor's price boom brought the AI-driven memory shortage into focus for a wider audience, but there was also a decidedly more physical detonation in Florida this week that looks like it might have imperiled NASA's moon plans. With me to discuss these stories are Reg reporters Richard Speed and Dan Robinson. Welcome to you both.
Hi there.
Hi.
Yeah, Dan, welcome. It's your first time on. We're glad to have you here on the Kettle. So let's jump right into it. So if you're not aware, game vendor and Linux gaming hardware kingpin Valve bumped the price of its flagship handheld, the Steam Deck, by more than 40% this week. And there's no need to guess why. AI is eating up all the memory and storage that the rest of the industry uses, and global geopolitics aren't really helping either. Richard, you covered this, so walk us through what exactly Valve announced.
Yeah, so this is the Valve Steam Deck handheld, which is it's a popular gaming device. And
Yeah,
what
I
happened?
have one
Well,
myself.
it's a great device. Although
Mhm.
it is getting a bit long in the tooth now, but it is a great device. Or
Yeah.
not so great at this price. Basically, the price of it, there's two types. There's a 512 gigabyte version and a 1 terabyte version. Both have got OLED screens. The
Right.
first
The
incarnation,
the LCD version, I believe, is discontinued at this point. They're not manufacturing it. So these are the
yeah.
Steam Decks.
That's correct. Yeah. So it's those two Steam Decks. So the 512 gigabyte version, that retailed for $549, and it's now gone up to $789.
Whew.
The one terabyte version has now gone up to $949, and that's a lot of money for a games
Yeah,
console. I mean,
absolutely.
we've seen companies like Sony increase the price of the PlayStation 5. We saw the Raspberry Pi, for example, that went
Mhm.
up. It was $100 hike, I think, for the 16 gigabyte Raspberry Pi 5. We've seen
Yep.
price increases from Microsoft. There's been a lot of price increases, and Steam. Valve didn't actually mention AI. They actually said, Steam Deck itself hasn't changed. These new prices
Mhm.
reflect the current state of component costs and other global logistical challenges across the
Right.
industry as a whole. That's what they exactly said. Um, I think you have to think that there is a factor at play that is consuming all the memory and storage in the industry, and that's
Mhm.
AI, and that's causing
Mhm.
prices to rise. What was also interesting was in the Raspberry Pi price rise announcement, the boss there, Eben Upton, said that the company would be reversing the increases as soon as the prices settle down again. He actually said that, whereas Valve, a little bit more coy, they just said, "We'll keep you updated if anything changes." So
Yeah,
this
which is
might
kind of
be the new
worrying, right?
normal.
Yeah, it's interesting because if anyone who would have asked me 2 weeks ago if they should buy a Steam Deck, I would have told them absolutely. I have a 512 gigabyte OLED. I love it. I've had it for a couple years now. There's some brand new AAA games that it won't run well, or you've got to scale down the graphics, or install some tweaks that Steam Deck users have suggested to make things run better. So it's not a plug and play necessarily. Honestly, you've got to know your way around Linux a little bit to get the most out of it. But it's phenomenal. I love it. $789? No, absolutely not. I would not recommend someone buy this. It's an old device. It's not, there's new ones coming out from, different companies. I think Intel just announced their own recently. There's a lot of other options out there, and the Steam Deck raising the price by this much doesn't seem like a great move to me. It's a logical one, but a big hike for something so old.
Well, yes, indeed. And it's as you say, you do need to be a little bit aware of tech in order to get the best out of it. But it is ultimately a consumer device. And so
Mhm.
I think consumers are now starting to feel what maybe we in the IT industry have known for a few years now, that hardware prices are going up and up and up. And
Yep.
they're now at the sharp pointy end of this as well.
Yeah. Now, so along with the AI triggered memory shortages, right? That's not the only reason we're seeing these price increases in the industry, right? Valve also mentioned the global geopolitical situation was affecting its prices too. I know, Dan, you wrote about this last month about the Iran war affecting hardware prices, and I'm guessing things probably haven't eased up since then.
As far as we know, there's still blockades and the
Yep.
ships aren't getting through. Um, so, what this was causing, there were reports out that it was affecting supply chains with materials and costs for servers,
Hmm.
and apparently construction companies were seeing increases of up to 20%, which was adding
Wow.
to the cost of data centers. And that's feeding through into various things as well. Um, and as we know, the memory situation is due to AI, because not so much because it's eating up all the memory, but because the chip makers have a certain amount of capacity,
Hmm.
and the chip types that are used in AI in the GPUs. Those make a much higher margin than memory does for ordinary PCs, so they prefer to
Right.
make that, and so there just isn't enough capacity left over to supply the PC makers. Um, that's been feeding through, as we know, people who've been trying to spec up a PC. That's been feeding through into higher prices. Um, some of the memory prices have gone up by a ridiculous amount, so
Yeah.
quadrupled since last year. And I believe now, I read somewhere that you're looking at well over $300 in the US for about 32 gigabyte modules.
Yeah, luckily I
Um,
haven't looked lately, so, I haven't had a need to. I'm terrified by the idea of one of my machines going bad and having to fix something, it's not a great time to be a hardware tinkerer, I feel like, right now. Dan, I think, what I now there's no chips being manufactured in the Middle East, obviously, so this is more of a supply chain issue. Are there particular components that come from the Middle East and Iran that are used in construction of these things, or is it mainly just, the supply chain kind of, being affected by this as the ripples expand?
it affects the whole supply chain.
Mhm.
Some things have to get routed round the Middle East, which makes it cost more to ship things.
Right.
There were concerns initially that things like helium, which are involved in chip manufacturing, but that doesn't seem to have become a big issue. It's so the Iran issue. It's mainly the oil. It's
Yeah. At the end of the
it's
day,
going
it
to
all
run
comes
out.
back to that, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, we're starting to see some of the effects of the memory crunch as well, in rising PC prices,
Mhm.
and as we've covered on the register, that's starting to kill off the budget PCs, and some of these manufacturers are now they're switching to just focusing on the higher end systems, high
Right, that's
performance ones.
yeah, that's paid out well for Lenovo, I think, based on a story you just wrote, right?
That was last week when they announced their latest results. Yes, they said that they'd managed to keep their margins up, keep their PC business profitable, and that was basically due to just selling higher spec systems.
Mhm.
I mean, how long
So
do you think this is going to go on for, Dan? I mean, are we
uh,
looking at 2027, 2028? This can't go on forever, surely, or can it?
Some of yeah, well, yeah, hopefully not. Fingers
yeah.
crossed. Some of the experts, um, they think that this could last through to the end of next year.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing too.
So
And I think, because you gotta think also, right? I mean, as I understand, chip fabs have pretty long lead times, right? Like, you gotta get
yes.
your orders in well in advance if you need X amount of whatever. So, I mean, if they're prioritizing these higher end chips for things like GPUs that are gonna serve AI workloads, yeah, I mean, add on to that supply constraints, geopolitics, and you've got just this growing backlog of, well, if we've got space available 2 years from now, why would we give it to budget RAM when we can give it to NVIDIA for more high-end GPU graphics cards that are going to go into more data centers? Um, so yeah, we're looking at least probably through the end of next year before this eases. But even then, right? Like Valve said, it might not adjust. I mean, it didn't say it wouldn't, right? But it was very non-committal. So I wonder if this is going to be a permanent price hike for a
Well, it
lot of
could be.
businesses.
Uh, I mean, without wishing to get too much into consumer tech, Valve does have a some new hardware coming out, the Steam
Right.
Machine, which the actual release date and the price have yet to be officially announced. I mean, Brandon, I guess as a Steam Deck user,
Mhm.
do you think this is going to have an impact on the price of Steam Machine, or maybe might Valve even just pull it back for a while and postpone it?
Yeah, I don't know, right? I mean, it could be like I think we've talked about this a bit off off air about, this could be them trying to soften the blow for a really expensive Steam machine. Uh, I don't know, right?
Mm.
I would hope that this doesn't mean that it's going to be, through the roof. Valve has always had a really good reputation with gamers. I feel like for being reasonable in their pricing, in their availability, and this is kind of one of those things that I feel like it's there's a bit of enshittification creep, right? You can feel it. It's prices are going up because we need to keep our margins, right? As opposed to serving our customers, which I feel like was sort of where Steam came from originally. I don't know. It also makes me wonder sometimes if, like Dan, you were saying that this is had a lot of companies pivoting to higher end equipment. But it also makes me wonder if, if prices go up and stay there, are we looking at a situation where, as opposed to companies saying, hey, we're going to sell this higher end stuff, it's more things like the Chromebook, right? Where it's this minimally spec'd machine that's incredibly dependent on services. You know, could it be that as opposed to going in the high end PC direction where they're looking at margins, they're looking more at recurring revenue through services? That could be a possibility too. Any thoughts on there, on guys?
The thing about Chromebooks is they're still although they're tied to kind of like cloud services,
Hmm.
people still buy them. They're not really a subscription product.
I guess that's true.
So
Yeah, I was imagining more of an evolution of that
Yeah. I mean, I'm
platform,
thinking,
right?
Dan, you wrote a piece, I think, yesterday about Qualcomm's $300 platform, which was interesting time to pitch that. But I mean, perhaps that could be an option.
yes, it's a little awkward for them because they were aiming for a $300 price tag for these laptops, which is their new ARM powered Snapdragon C platform. But obviously, you could quite easily hit $300 just with the memory. So, um, and I see Acer has announced one system. It announced its system yesterday, but it was very cagey. It didn't announce a price, and it's going to have a maximum of 8 GB of memory. That's the maximum. Um,
That's a low spec machine right there.
yeah, I'd worry about Windows 11 running properly on that. Um,
Yeah.
so
Richard, you the Windows guy. What's the minimum hardware specs for Windows 11 nowadays?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I always say there's lies, damn lies, and recommended hardware specs for Windows. You can get away with 4 gig, 8. The thing is, Microsoft recently got some flack because they did have some documentation saying you really need 16 gigs. And that's quietly been shelved, and I think possibly as a result of this memory chaos that's going
Mhm.
on.
that
That
was for
suddenly,
Copilot Plus, I believe, isn't it? 16 gig.
yeah. But I can imagine, and I think we've written about this before. I can easily see the AI PC requirements starting to drift downwards because 16 gig machines are now, instead of being the norm, are becoming the premium. That's kind of a premium machine now. Whereas a year ago, 16 gigs, crikey, I've got a machine down here that's got 16 gigs of RAM in it, which I'm thinking that actually might be quite a canny investment now.
Yeah, I've got an M1
Rather than,
MacBook from 2021 that I'm like, "Okay, 16 gigs Apple M1 Pro. I guess I'm hanging on to this until it falls
Yeah, but
apart with
definitely.
Steam."
Although, looking at Mac OS Windows 11, Mac OS has traditionally been better with memory than Windows. So, for example,
Mhm.
I've been running on a Mac Mini M1 for quite some time, and that's got 8 gigs. It's absolutely fine. I've used the Neo, again 8 gigs, absolutely fine. I'm not sure I'd want to run Windows 11 on 8 gigs for any length of time. I just think as soon as you start to load up with apps, it's going to start to struggle. But that is very subjective. I think we're going to see how this shakes out. But as Dan says, Asus are saying, well, here you go. Here's an 8 gig laptop. Knock yourselves out and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I could easily see that turning into, well, hey, you want, it just turning it into a recurring revenue model, right? As companies are, moving more toward putting everything they have into data centers and not consumer
Yeah,
devices.
for
Just
sure.
yeah.
And I think the other interesting thing is the only. I've not seen many people come out and say, well, the prices will go down again in the way that, say, even Upton of Raspberry Pi has said they're going to, we will reverse the prices when
Mhm.
prices price come down. Whereas Valve are saying, well, we'll just let you know what happens when it happens. So
Yeah.
no commitments being made. So, I mean, we could be looking at a new normal now.
Mhm.
The current pain we're going through. This could be how it's going to be going forwards, which is, yeah, it's going to make it interesting. I think for corporates when purchasing new laptop fleets, what spec you going to buy?
Yeah, yeah. More connected services, more minimal specs, I guess. We'll see, we'll see. So not to completely change the subject, I mean, we are still talking about booms, just not market-related ones. You guys have probably seen the video of that Blue Origin fireball. That was pretty spectacular. I think that happened on Thursday, was that right?
Yeah, US time was I think about 9 p.m. Eastern time. I think
Mhm,
it happened.
mhm. So do we know what happened, Richard? You wrote the story on that.
I mean, we don't know for sure exactly what happened. I mean, we've most of us have now seen the video, and
Mhm,
it. I mean, what was happening was they'd rolled the rocket. It's the fourth well, it was going to be the fourth attempted launch of a New Glenn
mhm,
rocket. They'd rolled it out of the pad. They'd erected it. They were doing some form of test. This might have been a static firing test. It might have been a wet dress rehearsal. Not quite sure exactly what they were doing.
mhm,
But it involved fueling up to the rocket. Now, the rocket, I think, is powered by 7B4 engines and runs on, I think, liquid methane. Sure,
mhm.
sorry, look at my notes here. Um, and they fueled they were fueling, or they'd fueled the rocket up. And then something happened at the base of the rocket, and it doesn't look like it was an engine ignition from what I could see. It looks like something happened, and it
Yeah, it
just
was
caused,
the whole thing, I mean, it just kinda rippled. You could see it start at the bottom and ripple up because I think one of the last
yeah.
shots visible of the rocket you have is the upper portion of it breaking apart. So
But again,
something.
I mean, I think it's important to note when we say it happened so fast, it was just suddenly
Mhm,
boom and it went. Because I mean, when these things go up, and the last one I think I saw was I think SpaceX lost a Falcon 9 on launch pad,
mhm.
and that seemed to kind of rumble and it exploded. Whereas this, it was like it detonated. It
Yeah.
was a really sudden explosion, and I mean, obviously, I mean, I want to make it clear here. Nobody was injured. All personnel are accounted for, and that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if we'll find out in the coming weeks if bits of dead debris, because because debris went everywhere. It was such a big explosion.
Yeah, and I
Um,
mean, heard from miles around, I think, Dan, you were saying earlier, 40-mile radius, I think was
yeah,
what
40,
people were
50 miles
reporting out.
around. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's
and it turned the sky. The sky was turned orange. It was, if you were in the area, in fact, if you were in the state, I think you probably would have been aware it was happening.
Yeah,
It was
right, and
quite
this
it
is
was quite
also
dramatic.
this isn't too long, I think it was just last week that they attempted to launch a satellite using one of their rockets, Blue Origin did, and it failed to reach orbit because something went wrong too?
Oh, yeah, it was a few months back. Yeah, but I
Okay.
mean, what happened was that was New Glenn 3. They or the third New Glenn launch, and what happened there was a failure with the second stage, and they didn't put the satellite, which was the Space Mobile Bluebird 7 satellite,
Mhm.
was left in the wrong orbit, and it came back to Earth, and whatever else. Uh, in the last week, the U.S. Federal Administration, sorry, they cleared New Glenn or Blue Origin to resume launching the New Glenn rocket because there'd been
Right.
an explanation. Blue Origin had implemented changes, and they were good to go. So I think that's why the rocket was being rolled off the pad, because it was due to
Mhm.
launch. I think it was another batch of Amazon Leo satellites, but they weren't on the rocket at the time. I hasten to add, so they're
Right.
in the facility somewhere in storage. So that's what they were trying to do. And yeah, I mean, they've basically taken out. I mean, it looks to me as though they've taken out the launch pad. There's not a lot of it left, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
where
right, like, I think in your story you mentioned that, when Starship exploded, a couple long like, nearby, right, it took months to bring it back into service, and by all accounts, this
yeah.
appears to have been a far worse explosion.
Oh yeah. I mean, Starship is. I mean, this is kind of, you almost feel like there's these billionaires having some kind of game of one-upmanship here, where
Yeah,
Elon Musk managed to crash the super heavy booster into the Gulf of Mexico
which,
or
again,
America.
grounded Starship again, according
But
to the
Starship has
FAA,
now
and
been
yep,
grounded while
yep.
they work out what happened there. Although that was, apart from that, the flight was relatively successful.
Mhm.
Although although one of the Raptor vacuum engines failed on that during while it was on its suborbital trajectory, which when they couldn't do the relight of the engine, and that means it
Right.
can't be trusted to go into orbit yet, which is a different issue.
Yeah.
Um, and then it's almost like Blue Origin said, "Right, hold my beer, watch this,"
Yeah,
and
biggest
basically,
explosion, I think was the biggest, space-related explosion since, what was it called? The Soviet rocket that blew up
yeah,
years
so
ago.
I mean, I think the maybe the one that's comparable is perhaps the Soviet Union's N-1 rocket from from the late 60s and 70s, which
Yeah.
that went up, and I think the only way that it was kept quiet for many, 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 many years. And I think the only reason the Americans were aware of it was they had a spy satellite going overhead, and one day the rocket was there, the next day there's a big crater. Something's happened there.
Yeah, I'm interested to see in the coming days what this launch pad looks like, once the
Yeah.
damage assessment's been done. But I
Well,
mean,
it's that.
Blue Origin also just got a contract from NASA, right, to help build this moon base. I mean, this is gonna put Artemis in danger again, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's surely only a matter of time now before NASA admits, yeah, the 2027 thing, 28 thing is just not going to happen now because uh,
Mhm.
they they're depending on these two commercial providers, Blue Origin and SpaceX,
Mhm.
to
And
effectively
neither one
provide
seems to
a
have his
landing.
act together.
Exactly, and the problem is, last week you had SpaceX, and that didn't go well, but
Mhm.
at least it made it into on a suborbital trajectory and deployed some Starlink mock-ups.
Mhm.
But you thought that's still quite a long way from going to the moon.
Yeah.
But that's okay. But there's a backup. There's Blue Origin. Oh no, there's not now because that's also blown up. And what Blue Origin was supposed to be doing was the plan for them was, I mean, they've yet to send their lunar lander to the moon. That's the
Mhm.
Blue Moon Mark One. That was going to go. I think I think it was going to go this year, and then next year they were going to do the Mark One was going to take NASA's Viper rover to the moon. The
Mhm.
Blue Moon Mark II, that's effectively the crewed, the human lander. So that was going to go up. That was going to go up in 2027. Again, this is all relying on the New Glenn. This is the problem. It all relies on the New Glenn. So that was going to go
Yep.
up. And then that, and hopefully whatever SpaceX can get ready for the human landing system for Starship was going to go up as well. And then for Artemis 3, NASA was going to practice rendezvousing and other bits and pieces, maybe even get astronauts on board these spacecraft in
Mhm.
low Earth orbit. That was the plan.
Right.
This means that plan, I just think, is probably in as big a crater as the bits that are left of the New Glenn rocket, because it's just like you think, I, I, I can't imagine how you'd recover from this in a period of time to actually make what was planned for Artemis 3 possible. It's just not possible now. But heck, I would love to be proved wrong.
Oh, yeah, me too, right? Like, every time this happens, I'm kinda like, "Oh, hey, look, the billionaires failed to get a rocket into space again." There's an element of schadenfreude there, but also an element of, "Come on, guys, let's just get this working," right?
Well, yeah,
I want
exactly.
I want it to succeed too without continuously polluting the atmosphere with bits of God knows what as they explode in various levels of orbit.
Yeah,
It'd be
exactly.
great if this worked.
And of course, the point you made about the time it's going to take to get back. I mean, with the SpaceX, I think it was the Amos 6 mission in 2016 that exploded at a launch pad. It took
Mhm.
about a year before they were launching Falcon 9s from
Yeah.
that launch pad again. So I think we're looking at least that period of time for this, probably longer. I mean, I can remember talking to another boss of a rocket company. I think it was Peter Beck and Rocket Lab. And he said, one of the problems you've got is building the launch pad is the single most expensive, time-consuming thing you can do. So in
Mhm.
this instance, it would have been good if New Glenn were not good, but it would have been less bad if it had launched a little bit off the pad and then blown up, rather than blowing up while on the pad, taking out all the ground infrastructure with it. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
These things are just massive bombs, though, really, aren't they? They
Oh,
well,
yeah.
that's the whole
it's
point.
just
Yeah.
they release their energy slowly normally when they
Yep.
Well,
when they
exactly.
I
launch.
mean,
This is
clearly,
what
right? You
astronauts
saw
are
the
so brave.
mushroom cloud coming off that thing. It was insane.
Yeah.
It looked like a nuclear explosion practically. It
Well,
was nuts.
I mean, they are horrendous things, and I always salute astronauts because they have to sit on top of these things, and it is basically a controlled explosion. That's how chemical rockets
Yeah.
work. They are
Yep.
exploding all this fuel, and it's designed to be highly explosive and very energetic because it's got to lift this rocket off. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, but mushroom
Yeah.
cloud's the right word. I mean, if you've not seen the video, I'd recommend looking at it because it's just astonishing.
Yeah, I'll be sure to include a link to it in the text copy that I add for the recording because yeah, if you haven't seen it, you definitely need to go watch it. So, all right, well, let's hope that maybe next week we have something a little less explosive to talk about. But no matter what it is, we will be here to talk about it on the kettle. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.